I'm Jared Van, and I'm going to be talking about measurement questions and concerns in behavior analysis, special education, and education. Now, in applied behavior analysis, we're all kind of taught a lot of the similar same things when it comes to measurement practices. And after I got my BCBA and I left my master's program, went into my PhD program, I really started questioning whether or not these are the best and most scientifically rigorous practices in measurement that we could be applying to help the learners that we work with or the clients that we work with. So let's go over some of these big measurement issues I have. Now, I have seven total. We're only going to be able to get to about probably four of them today. But the big measurement issues that I have in ABA education and special education are one, using sessions as a unit of time. Two, using operational definitions instead of a pinpoint plus. Three, using percent correct instead of frequency. Four, using a non-standard line graph instead of a standard acceleration chart. Five, measuring an absolute value instead of relative change. Now, we're not going to get to that today, but if you go to my website right there, jaredvan.com, go to the videos, go to Precision Teaching, there's a video on it that describes it perfectly. Six, measuring private behavior. We're not going to have time to do that today, but that's actually what my dissertation is on, and I'll be talking about that more soon. And then seven, dose. When I'm talking about dose, I'm talking about being able to prescribe a particular dose of an intervention to a client. For instance, via the research that we conduct, we should be able to determine how long or how much of an intervention, how many hours it will take, and how long it will take for an individual to be able to reach a determined goal. And then if we use a standard acceleration chart, we could actually project a standard acceleration or acceleration line to determine how long that's going to take. I'll go more into that in another video. But for now, let's go on to this first big measurement issue, using sessions as a unit of time. Now, sessions are not a standard unit of time. For instance, you have to ask, how long is a session? Every time you look at that x-axis, you should look at all the posters and poster sessions and look at that x-axis and ask, how can they accurately and reliably compare the effects of their intervention with others when session is such an ambiguous and unknown unit of time? For instance, are all the sessions the same length? Does more than one session occur on the same day? And if so, how many and what effect does that have on the data display? And how much time elapses between each sessions? You see, standard units are of time are seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years. And if we want to be a science, a real science, a natural science, as we were when we were initially created, we should be reporting across those time units. Here's an example. A teacher providing data that occurs in 1 minute one session, 2 minutes the next, and 3 minutes the third session may show an ascending trend completely due to the artifact of giving the students increasingly larger amounts of time each session. That's a problem, and this affects how practitioners make decisions. Now, there is a solution to this problem. We could use a standard display, a standard visual display, such as the standard acceleration chart. Now, I'm not going to show the whole thing yet because I know people get scared, but here's a portion of it. Each daily per minute standard acceleration chart is the same. So you see where that arrow is pointing, it shows the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday lines. Each vertical line is a day line. It represents one day. And each thick blue line is a Sunday line. And then it goes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And then there's another big, thick Sunday line after that. With the standard acceleration chart, precision teachers note what calendar day a behavior occurred on. And then if you look at that red box that I have outlined, you can see how long the observation time was. So precision teachers, we often, and we also note how long we were observing. And it's more precise and it provides enough data for replication. You see how we can be more precise with our measurement practices by simply standardizing the way that we provide our visual display and using days instead of sessions. I don't think that this is a really hard sell, but let's move on to the next one. The next one is using operational definitions instead of pinpoint plus. Operational definitions have five overall shortcomings from a theoretical, practical, and applied perspective. One, they differ from the constructs they represent. Two, they are often subjective and arbitrary. 3, they are difficult to operationalize and measure accurately. 4, they may lead to low signal detection for measuring a target behavior. And 5, they may not match with the actual events of people who experience the operationalized target behavior. Also, there's no formula for making an operational definition. Everyone just slaps together a combination of words until they feel the description is good enough. There's no standardization, so many times the description ends up ambiguous, subjective, and hard to detect accurately. Additionally, how many times have you seen an operational definition have more than one behavior included, or have subjective terms like forcefully or intentionally, or even be super long, exceeding 30 words or more? This affects how practitioners make decisions. So instead of using an operational definition, we could use a pinpoint plus. Pinpoint plus has a formula for construction, a learning channel, a movement cycle, and a context. The pinpoint plus movement cycle includes an action verb, an object or an event that receives the action, and a comprehensively defined context where the observation of the action verb plus the object or event occurs. The plus is the learning channel. So here we can see if we're trying to measure if students can say their letter sounds or say their letters when the teacher points to letter, it could just be see, say, says letter when teacher points to letter. It's very clear, very precise. Everybody, including the individual who is learning, can know what is expected of the behavior, the person that is being measured, the person whose behavior is being measured, and all stakeholders are understanding what's going on because it represents an alternative for describing target behaviors instead of operational definition. And a fully formed pinpoint enhances detection of the target behavior and directly represents the target selected for observation. It also improves communication among stakeholders, like I just said. Additionally, pinpoints may also provide better detection accuracy than operational definitions. And that's not just some random claim. I got receipts. So let's take a look at that. In 2022, Kubina et al. Compared the detection accuracy of an operational definition versus a pinpoint for observing self-injurious behavior, specifically head hitting in videos. Operational definitions resulted in lower detection accuracy, 75% on average, compared to pinpoints with a 93% detection accuracy on average when participants observed videos of self-injurious behavior. So there is also greater variability and inconsistency in detection accuracy scores using the operational definition compared to the pinpoint. I'd also like to turn your attention to those range values. Look at those low to high ranges of the operational definition versus the pinpoint plus and how much tighter it is for the pinpoint plus compared to the operational definition. This affects how practitioners make decisions. And when it comes to that, those learning channels, behavior is not omitted, it is permitted by the environment. With these learning channels, we can describe the ways that sensory information comes in and it goes out. And this matrix is specifically for academic, personal, social learning, but others exist. So when we're in school, the most relevant academic skills, the channels most relevant for academic skills are visual input, auditory output, such as see, say, maybe you see letters or see words and you read aloud. Auditory input, writing output, you hear write, such as spelling words from dictation or taking notes from what a professor or teacher says. And then also visual input, writing output, see write, such as solving math problems, or maybe you're copying what's on the board. So it's also there's also one for hearsay. So let's say you hear the teacher talk and ask a question, and then you say the answer. Now, one thing that was able to be done by Kubina was he was able to detect and find fluency aims. These are standards for individuals to be able to have the basic foundation for them to be able to apply more difficult behavior on top of it. So, for instance, see, say letter sounds 120 to 100 sounds per minute, which we put the bigger number first because we want our students to reach to the top. Having these fluency aims helps it so that once they're able to see and say letter sounds, they can be able to blend and combine these letter sounds to make words and read words. And if you're not able to reach these fluency aims, you're going to have difficulty going to the next step higher when you're doing the next thing. So even for handwriting, we got some for those, spelling, math, etc. Now, let's go on to my next problem with our measurement practices, which is using percent correct instead of frequency. Here we have data from three groups of people: a group with intellectual disabilities aged 12 to 57, public school children aged 5 to 7, and adult therapists and administrators working at the state school. When we analyze behavior using measures as insensitive as percent correct, we cannot detect any differences between these three groups. Therefore, decision making is hampered by such insensitive measurement. So as you can see, all three groups look like they're performing the same. They're all at 100%. So there must be no difference between the students with disabilities versus the non-disabled adults, right? Well, so when we use measurement with frequency, which is count per time, like number of times written, a number is written per minute, we can see the differences between beginning and mastery levels of skill. Since frequency is used here, you can clearly see the difference of levels of performance. So as you can see, if you go to the right ones, right zeros, right sevens, we can clearly see the difference between beginning and mastery levels of performance compared to when we go back and we look at these percentages. There's so much data that's left off of the table because we can't detect the difference between these different levels of performance. So if we want to truly be able to measure sensitive information such as behavior across time, we need to be using frequency, which is count per unit of time, because accuracy is not a sufficient criterion for mastery. I'm not lagging right now, but for instance, if I talk like this, I'm saying all the words that you need to say to be able to understand or for me to be able to be understood, but it's not the pace at which one needs to speak to have fluent speech or fluent conversations. Another example is, let's say I'm crossing the street. I could have crossed the street with 100% accuracy, but don't you have to have a little pace with it too so that the car doesn't come and hit you? Additionally, if you're driving your car and you get pulled over and the police officer says, here's a ticket for going 77%, you're going to say, 77% of what? 77%, 77 miles per hour. So you need that unit of time. Additionally, imagine if a doctor measured your heartbeat and accuracy. Yep, you're all good. 100%. Your heart is beating. That's not going to help. That's going to be problematic, and you're going to ask for another doctor. Now, one way in education that we do use frequency is when we talk about typing. We measure how many words per minute can you type. Sometimes we measure how many words per minute can you read. We need to add these practices to our behavior analytic and educational measurement systems because percent correct is not good enough and it doesn't reach true mastery, which is fluency, the combination of accuracy plus speed that characterizes competent performance. Now, for performance data, using frequency instead of POO, percent opportunity occurrence, is more kind to our learners because our learners can move beyond that 100%. We could better detect differences in performances over time. Moving to frequency instead of POO can give your learner the chance to tell you how well they can perform. And it allows skills and performances to grow to their full potential instead of capping them off at a predetermined level. Now, you may be wondering, well, it seems like percent is bad and I should never use it. Well, that's not true. Frequent percent isn't bad because it has its uses like describing demographic data. But when we're measuring performance, we should be using frequency. We should use frequency for the most part for that performance instead of poo. Just don't turn your data into percent correct. Some additional problems with poo are with Pooh, we don't know how many opportunities there were for responding. We can't tell how much time was required to complete the work. You can't demonstrate or imitate the performance because it lacks time-based information to duplicate it. And if I tell you that something is 80% correct, have I reported the occurrence of that thing? No. When you turn your data from raw numbers of performance into percent, you move further away from an actual representation of what that learner did. And additionally, frequency is always 10 to 100 times more sensitive. Now, you can still be 100% accurate and have a level of performance below what is considered competent. For instance, if Shaq makes one free throw, is he a good free throw shooter? Do we know if he's a good free throw shooter? Well, he's 100% accurate. He must be Steph Curry from the free throw line, right? No, no, no. We need more data. Percent is not going to tell the full story. It's going to mask a lot of information that we need to know to be able to help our learners, our clients. Here's another example. If two students take the same math test and score 100%, student A took 5 minutes to finish and student B took 30 minutes to finish. They were both focused on the test the entire time. Student B's parents say that student B is struggling with math at home, but according to the test, they're on par with their classmates. Which student do you think knows math better? Well, with this information, student A looks like they know math better because they're able to complete it more quickly. But if we only go by percent, it masks the problem. They're not fluent and they're having trouble being able to keep pace. This affects how practitioners make decisions. Now let's go on to using a non-standard line graph instead of a standard acceleration chart. I want you to look at these graphs right here, these charts. Each of these have the same data, but the axes are scaled differently. You see, you can stretch or shrink your y-axis to make your intervention look more or less effective. The scaling of the axis can create the illusion of an effective intervention or an ineffective intervention. And the scaling has to be changed when the data increases beyond the highest number on that axis. And this affects practitioners, how practitioners make decisions, because when you go to look at a person's poster, you should ask, why did you scale your axis like that? What rules were followed to select the scaling, and are they the same rules across different graphs? Not to attack those who use non-standard line graphs because that's what we're taught. But we should question, is this the most scientifically rigorous practice, or is there a better way? Well, fortunately, there is. Let me show you the standard acceleration chart. A thing of beauty. The standard acceleration chart can measure 1 per day to 1,000 per minute, which is essentially the entire spectrum of human behavior frequencies. The only things that can reach up to 1,000 per minute are like drumming, and one person might have been able to tap dance that quickly. But other than that, anything that you're going to measure can live on this one chart and reliably display any behavior in the class without changing the axes. Precision teachers can compare it across different behaviors, people, environments, conditions, and more, all on the same visual display. Now, fun fact, one of the only things that might go above the chart are hummingbirds' wings flapping. Those might go above 1,000 per minute, but we're not measuring that. We're talking about human performance today. So this is one of the reasons why we should be moving to this chart, because we can put a whole bunch of different things on the chart and then try to determine and see functional relationships, something that you can't do with non-standard line graphs. Now, let's talk a little bit more about why standardization is important. Now, this might be a jump scare. Look at this graph. This might be one of the most horrendous graphs I've ever seen in my life, talking about gun deaths in Florida and the number of murders committed using firearms. If you look over there at 2005, Florida enacted its Stand Your Ground law. Now, if you're not really closely looking, it might look like that Florida Stand Your Ground law decreased gun deaths. But you got to look at that axis and the scaling of the axes. At the top is 0 and at the bottom is 1,000. So there was a substantial increase in number of gun deaths after the Stand Your Ground law. The way that we design our graphs can fool, manipulate, or bamboozle people into believing certain things. So without standardization, these kinds of monstrosities can occur and will occur to have individuals, try to do what they want to do and push their agenda. Now, look at these three. In panels A and B, each use equal interval add subtract scales to show two behaviors, high frequency words read and low frequency out of seat. The range of the scale in panel A is sufficiently large to show the reading behavior, but the out of seat frequencies are so low that they're squeezed to insignificance at the bottom. Conversely, the scale used in panel B is sufficiently detailed to show the out of seat behavior, but using the same chart and the same scale to show the reading behavior would take a chart 123 feet tall. Neither add subtract scale will work with both behaviors. When the two behaviors are charted with the ratio scale, they fit nicely, and all the little ups and downs in behaviors are clearly visible. So by displaying data in a way that shows patterns and changes equitably across all frequency ranges, the standard acceleration chart provides a more accurate and useful visual representation compared to linear charts. This makes it a more equitable tool for analyzing and interpreting behavior data across diverse performances and learners. The standard acceleration chart provides equity by focusing on the rate of learning, how quickly or slowly a behavior changes over time, rather than just the absolute level of performance. So let's talk about this standard acceleration chart. Standard acceleration charts have 140 days on them, which is roughly a school semester, and the x-axis was accommodated for 140 successive calendar days, which at the time of its creation was about the equivalence of one school semester. Thus, both frequent and infrequent behaviors could be plotted on the same graph and displayed for an entire semester. It's used to make database decisions about instructional changes by visually analyzing the level, trend, and variability of the data. Educators can set acceleration line goals and make changes if data fall above or below the line goal. The standard acceleration chart allows for the use of behavioral metrics such as acceleration, bounce or variability, and frequency multipliers that quantify learning progress. These metrics are used to compare learning across different skills or learners. And let's look at those metrics. With the standard acceleration chart, you can quantify level, trend, and variability. You can quantify the level with level value, trend with acceleration, and variability with bounce. When non-standard line graphs are used, subjective words like high, low, and moderate come into play. How can you accurately and reliably determine and describe the effectiveness of an intervention without numbers? Words like high, low, and moderate are subjective and fail to stand up to scientific rigor. And science isn't just based on what we agree to be true. We need to quantify or express the measurement in numbers if we hope to apply science to our analysis of behavior, because this affects how practitioners make decisions. When you can't quantify variability or slope, then you have to use those subjective terms. And we want to be able to use numbers to describe them. So performance is the measure of behavior one time, measured in frequency, count over time. Learning is a process, and learning is the measurement of the change of rates of responding over time, also known as acceleration. We see acceleration by using the standard acceleration chart. And I love this little thing that I found in Dr. Kabina's book, the Precision Teaching book. Acceleration is to learning as meter is to length. And one of the biggest arguments, I know people are already saying this in the comments probably, one of the biggest arguments about using the standard acceleration chart is that it's too hard to use or too hard to learn. And a lot of people believe that it's too difficult for them to learn how to use a standard acceleration chart. Well, I've thought of that. Take a look. This is Teresa's chart. She's 6 and she's working on sight words. You can see her self-portrait off to the side of the chart as well. Those X's are her incorrect responses of sight words, which went down. And those dots are correct responses of sight words, which went up. And we love to see it. So if Teresa, a 6-year-old, could learn how to use the standard acceleration chart, don't you think we all can? If you're getting your master's, if you're a behavior tech, whatever, you probably can learn how to use the standard acceleration chart too, if Teresa, a 6-year-old, has learned as well. And just to kind of bring the point home, let's see how some students might be utilizing it. You ever see a kid solve a classmate's learning problem? Watch this.
What was the problem that she was having?
She kept on getting 16, but I realized Emma was too below her line, so I got Emma an intervention.
Oh, can you show me her chart where she was too below her line? Here, we can flip it around. Okay, yes,
With precision teaching, learners become part of their own learning process. So they are charting Emma's performance on the timings chart, a variation of the standard acceleration chart. To make sure that Emma meets her goal, we want her performances to stay at or above that line. And there's a rule where if there are 2 trials where they are below that line, they need an intervention. And this young precision teacher knows just that. Let's see what he does.
2 below her line. Okay, now tell me about the intervention that you came up with.
Well, I thought Emma might need a 20-second intervention, so...
And do you remember what that's called? What type of intervention? It's endurance training.
So typically timings are done for a minute, but sometimes when we are learning something new and trying to become fluent in that skill, we start fast, but at the end of the timing, we slow down. So we have endurance interventions where we say, hey, let's do that skill for a shorter amount of time and see if in that amount of time you hit your goal for what it would have been in a minute. So if it needs to be 60 per minute, 20 in 20 seconds would be the goal in this intervention.
Okay, so when you did a 20-second timing, how much did she get?
Emma got like 19 or 20.
Which was was that the ultimate aim if she was doing a
Yes.
minute? So you met your aim, Emma, on 20 seconds. Good job.
In precision teaching, the progress monitoring is so sensitive, even the kids who are trained to be precision teachers catch when someone is not meeting their goal the day of, so we don't get off track or left behind. So that's an example of how students are using the standard acceleration chart themselves and able to, detect problems in learning, and then also provide interventions the day of. And this could be incredible for our ability to measure students' progress across time and then make sure that they keep up with their same age peers, catch up to their same age peers, and meet their goals in desirable amounts of time that are not taking forever. So, maybe that all doesn't convince you. Well, here is this. I made this table showing the ethics code sections on the left and the potential ethics codes violations on the right. I was able to identify 20 potential ethics codes violations for using non-standard line graphs instead of a standard acceleration chart, according to the BACB's own guidelines. Now, I'm not calling any person unethical for not using the standard acceleration chart, because this is a problem with behavior analysis as a whole, how we train behavior analysts, and what is reinforced and punished in our field. The message is this: we have a better technology to detect, measure, and decision make than the one that most of us are using. I believe our learners deserve the best technology we have to offer. So the only question is, will we use it? Our ethics code should inform how practitioners make decisions. So let's say that doesn't convince you either. Well, let's talk about what Julie Vargas, B.F. Skinner's own daughter, said. She said, precision teaching has adopted from Skinner, as Kubina and Starlin put it, the use of a standard unit of performance, measurement, frequency, and a standard display of visual data. In these respects, the field follows in Skinner's footsteps more closely than does behavior analysis in general. She goes on to say, precision teaching has much to contribute to behavior analysis and behaviorologists solely by its pinpointing of dependent variables, its measurement system, and its standard data display. So, over the course of this lecture, we've talked about my big measurement issues in ABA and education/special education. They are using sessions as the unit of time, using operational definitions instead of pinpoint plus, using percent correct instead of frequency, using a non-standard line graph instead of a standard acceleration chart, measuring an absolute value instead of relative change, which if you want to see more about that, you can go to my website, jaredvan.com, go to the videos, go to precision teaching, and there's videos on all of these, measuring private behavior and dose. Now, here are my citations, and please ask any questions in the comments. This is the first time I'm doing this, so let me know if you want more of things like this. If you want me to go over some of these other things like measuring private behavior, I'm going to have a video on that, and that's actually my dissertation. And then dose, I might make a video on that depending on if y'all want it. So please let me know what y'all think in the comments down below. Like, comment, subscribe, smash that subscribe button. I've always wanted to say that. And I'm out. I'm Jared, a PhD candidate at Penn State, Black and here to educate.